Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take information you're curious about. Today, it's a pretty detailed report, and we basically pull out the key insights.
Yeah, the idea is to help you get up to speed fast, understand what really counts.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into the Startup Ecosystem Report 2025.pdf. It comes from Startup Link.
Right, Startup Link. They're a global research outfit. They map the whole tech startup world.
Yeah, and their mission isn't just, tracking who's winning. They also work with governments, big companies.
Helping them grow their own innovation scenes, basically. Using data, making policy suggestions.
And putting out these big reports, like the one we have here. So our mission today, cut through this thing.
Figure out the global state of play for startups, spot the big shifts.
And maybe find some surprises along the way.
So how do they do it? Startup Link has this huge global database. We're talking hundreds of thousands of startups, VCs, accelerators, all that.
Wow, okay.
And they use their own algorithm to rank 1,473 cities and 118 countries.
Yeah, so what exactly?
Three main things. Quantity, that's just the sheer amount of startup activity. Yeah. How much is going on.
Exactly.
Then quality. That looks at the impact, the success. Think unicorns, big exits, that sort of stuff.
Okay, so not just busyness, but actual results.
Precisely. And the third is business environment.
Yeah.
How easy is it to actually start and grow a business there? Regulations, talent access, infrastructure.
Got it. Quantity, quality, business environment. So what are the big, overarching forces the report sees shaping things right now?
Well, they flag two major dynamics. First off, no surprise really, artificial intelligence.
Yeah, everywhere.
They see it as a really massive technological breakthrough, one that could fundamentally, reshape entire economies.
Okay, that's the tech side. What's the other big force?
The second is the shifting geopolitical landscape. Things are changing globally.
How so?
The report suggests we're moving towards a more maybe regionalized global economy, different economic blocks kind of forming.
Okay. And that means?
It means founders need to be really smart, not just about their industry, but where they decide to build their company. Location strategy is becoming critical.
Right. Fascinating. Okay, let's zoom in then. Who are the global leaders right now? Is the top tier changing much?
The U.S. is still holding that number one spot. It's a big lead, actually. Almost 4 times the score of the UK in second place.
4 times? Wow. Has it always been that wide?
Well, interestingly, the report notes the gap had been narrowing for a few years, like up until maybe 2022 or so. But it seems to have stabilized more recently.
So still dominant, even if others are growing.
Yeah, it suggests some really deep-rooted advantages there. Access to capital, a really mature ecosystem, stuff that's hard to overtake quickly.
But is it all smooth sailing for the U.S.? Are there any warning signs or maybe signs of slowing momentum?
Well, that's the interesting part. While they're number one, the U.S. actually shows the lowest ecosystem growth rate among the top 50 countries.
Really? Lowest?
Yeah, 18.2%. Compare that to the UK at 26.3% or Israel at 20.6%. That's a noticeably slower pace.
Okay, that paints a different picture.
And there's more. The report says a majority of U.S. cities actually declined in the rankings this year. More went down than up. Plus, the total number of U.S. cities in the index has dropped quite a bit. From 383 back in 2020 to just 221 in this 2025 report.
That's a huge drop in the number of ranked cities. That feels significant.
It does suggest maybe a concentration or perhaps other global cities are just rising faster.
But despite those points, the U.S. is still generally seen as a good place to start a company, right? What keeps it attractive?
Oh, absolutely. The report highlights things like their flexible bankruptcy laws. That sounds dry, but it's actually really important.
How so?
It encourages risk-taking. Founders know if things go south, it's not necessarily the absolute end. They can potentially try again. It fosters that high-risk culture.
Right. Less fear of failure allows for bigger bets.
Exactly. And initiatives like Select USA actively try to bring in foreign entrepreneurs and investment. Plus, you have that core free market capitalism thing, very profit-driven, high tolerance for risk.
Okay. And within the U.S., where's the main action? Still Silicon Valley.
The San Francisco Bay Area is definitely still the epicenter, especially now with the huge boom in AI. You've got OpenAI, DeepMind, Anthropic, all clustered there.
The big names in AI, yeah.
But the report also points out other U.S. hubs are gaining traction. Places offering maybe lower costs, different market access.
Like where?
They specifically mention Round Rock, Texas, actually, near Austin, close to Dell. It's flagged as a compelling alternative for startups wanting to avoid the Bay Area's crazy costs.
Interesting. Okay, let's pivot. Let's talk about Europe. Who are the big players there?
Well, the UK is holding strong. Still number 2 globally, number 1 in Europe. They've got a really vibrant scene.
Yeah. Any examples?
The report mentions successes like Revolut, TradingView, Checkout.com, Monzo, OVO Energy, quite a list.
Household names, some of those.
Right. And they benefit from strong government support too. Innovate UK, Tech UK, plus they've got this AI regulation framework in place. And London, of course.
Still a huge global hub.
Absolutely. Especially for fintech. And it hosts a ton of major tech events.
Okay, UK strong. What about Israel? They always punch above their weight.
They really do. The report calls Israel's ecosystem a cash cow now.
A cash cow? Why?
Mostly driven by huge startup exits, which means big returns for investors and high salaries. Think about Wiz being bought by Google for what, $32 billion?
Wow.
And Mobileye by Intel for $15 billion a while back. They're global leaders, especially in cybersecurity and defense tech.
Right, areas they're known for.
But there's an interesting potential downside flagged. This intense focus on cyber and defense. Maybe it's pulling resources and focus away from other important deep tech areas.
Like what kind of areas?
Other fundamental science or engineering breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Maybe advanced materials, other forms of AI, complex hardware, that kind of thing.
So specialization has its trade-offs.
It seems so.
Yeah.
And there's this paradox the report mentions with Israel. Amazing entrepreneurial talent, world-class. But some policy and infrastructure lags behind, like big global fintechs, Stripe and Revolut, not really present in Israel, even though Israeli companies like Payoneer are global fintech successes.
That is weird.
And, they produce MoveIt and Mobileye, right? Giants in transport tech. Yet public transport within Israel is often called inefficient. Uber doesn't operate there. It's a strange disconnect.
It's definitely a paradox. Okay, moving on. Singapore's been making a lot of noise. What's driving their growth?
Yes, Singapore's growth is seriously impressive. 44.9% growth rate in the ecosystem score. They've jumped 12 places since 2020.
Wow.
And get this, their total ecosystem score is now double China's.
Double China's. That's remarkable. Where are they strong?
Leading in e-commerce and retail, and especially fintech, they're ranked number 1 globally in financial services.
What's behind it? Government push.
Seems like it plays a big role. Initiatives like Startup SG, big events like Switch CH, and it's becoming a major fundraising destination too, ranked 6th globally for deal value.
Okay, Singapore's clearly on the rise. What about Canada? Feels like they always have potential, but...
Yeah, Canada's got opportunities, but also challenges. You have massive successes like Shopify, born and bred there.
Right.
But then you also have examples like Slack, started in Vancouver, but eventually moved HQ to the U.S.
Ah, the retention issue.
Exactly. The report stresses that Canada needs to not just create great startups, but keep them and also attract more top global talent.
Are they making progress?
Regional initiatives are helping. Partnerships with big corporations are building a foundation. And it's not just the big cities. Kingston, Ontario is highlighted for success in clean tech, energy health tech.
Good to see smaller hubs thriving. Now, Sweden. They're always up there, right? Stable.
Very stable. 6th globally, leading the EU alongside maybe Germany and France, depending on the metric. And their growth is strong, too, over 30%, which is high for a top European country.
Home to some giants, too.
Oh, yeah. Spotify, Minecraft, Klarna, King, the list goes on.
Any bumps in the road?
Well, the report does mention setbacks, like the bankruptcy of Northvolt, the battery company. It's a reminder that even in strong ecosystems, those really capital-intensive deep tech startups face huge challenges.
True. Okay, France and Switzerland. Also top 10 regulars.
Yep. France is stable at 8th globally, also growing well over 30%. Paris hit its best ever rank at 8th too, and Bordeaux is climbing fast.
And Switzerland.
Switzerland recovered nicely to 9th globally. And they actually had the highest growth rate among the top 5 European countries, over 31%.
What's helping them?
The Swiss Innovation Agency, InnoSuisse, plays a role. They're Swissnex network abroad. And they had a recent unicorn in digital assets, Signum.
Right. What about the Netherlands and Estonia? Always hear good things.
The Netherlands offers that attractive mix. Strong innovation in cities, but also a high quality of life. They've had a long-term commitment to entrepreneurship.
How so?
Things like startup visas, investing in AI. It stems from past action plans.
Yeah.
And they have global players like Booking.com, Adyen, ASML, very solid.
And Estonia, the digital nation.
Their ecosystem is very centralized in Tallinn, but super effective. Tallinn jumped up to 49th globally. They're particularly strong in transportation tech, 2nd globally.
Wow, 2nd.
Yeah. And their work in Estonia program seems pretty successful at pulling in international talent.
Okay, so Europe is definitely a hotbed. Lots of strong players, lots of movement. What about other regions? Where else are we seeing major growth?
Well, looking at subregions, Central Asia is actually the fastest growing overall right now.
Central Asia, really?
Yeah, plus 43.3% growth rate. Quite remarkable. Followed by East Asia at plus 34%, and the Middle East is also growing strong at plus 28.8%.
Any regions lagging?
The Caribbean actually saw slight negative growth, negative 2.4%.
Interesting regional differences. You mentioned the Middle East growth. The UAE often comes up.
Absolutely. The UAE is showing, quote, stellar momentum. They're up to 21st globally, growth over 30%. Dubai especially has climbed steadily over the last 6 years.
What sectors are they strong in?
Fintech is a big one. They're 14th globally there. And also blockchain, where they rank 7th.
Okay, strong push there. What about the huge economies, India and China? How are they doing?
India actually dropped 3 spots to 22nd this year. Growth is still decent at almost 17%, but maybe not keeping pace with some others.
Where are their strengths concentrated?
Bangalore is strong in transportation tech, New Delhi in e-commerce and retail, Mumbai in edtech. Different city specializations.
In China.
China's stable at 13th, but they're closing the gap on 12th place. And their ecosystem growth rate is the highest among the top 35 countries, almost 46%.
46%. That's huge. Driven by.
Well, they dominate in transportation tech. Shanghai, Beijing, Hangzhou are all top 10 cities globally for that. And given their massive investment in AI, you have to assume that's a major factor in the overall growth, too.
Makes sense. Let's jump back to Europe quickly. Spain has been making efforts to boost its startup scene, right? New laws, visas.
Yeah, they have the entrepreneurial nation strategy, the startup law with the digital nomad visa.
Is it working? Seems like it, at least partially. Barcelona climbed significantly to 33rd globally, with really strong growth over 40%. Madrid actually slipped a bit in the rankings, though its growth was still healthy, so maybe a mixed picture, but Barcelona's rise is notable.
Okay. Are there other countries or maybe specific trends the report flags as worth watching?
Definitely. Finland's got a solid ecosystem, very strong in gaming, think Supercell, Rovio. Helsinki is becoming a key Northern European hub.
Right.
Ireland is really focused on infrastructure for businesses and attracting talent. Tech Life, Ireland is one initiative. Denmark's scene is known for being very founder-focused.
Lithuania.
Lithuania has carved out a niche as a cybersecurity powerhouse, third globally, first in Europe, mostly centered in Vilnius.
Impressive specialization.
South Korea is interesting. They have huge global companies like Samsung and LG, right? But the government is actively trying to foster a homegrown startup giant with global reach. They have specific plans for that.
Trying to replicate the K-Ball's success in the startup world. Kind of seems like it. And then there's Saudi Arabia. They were actually named Startup Link's Country of the Year.
Why is that?
For really shaking up and reinventing their ecosystem under their Vision 2030 plan. Streamlining company registration, removing limits on foreign ownership, making big changes. Riyadh jumped massively in the city ranks.
Okay, big ambition there. And you mentioned a city of the year, too.
Yes. That was Baku in Azerbaijan. Recognized for just really fast growth and pushing digital transformation driven by their innovation agency.
Wow, Baku. That highlights how growth can come from unexpected places. It really sounds like innovation is happening everywhere. Any other super quick highlights?
Let's see. Cyprus broke into Europe's top 25. Ukraine's tech scene showing amazing resilience, especially in SaaS. Brazil leads in Latin America, focusing now on AI and sustainability. Portugal's hot, boosted by its startup law. Luxembourg's focusing on space tech and fintech.
Okay, a whirlwind tour.
Yeah, even places like Senegal got their first unicorn. Poland's got potential, but maybe hasn't fully hit its stride yet. Turkey's growing, strong in gaming. South Africa's Johannesburg overtook Cape Town. Armenia's emerging. Vietnam's rising. The list goes on.
It really does paint a picture of a truly global and very dynamic landscape.
Absolutely. Lots of movement, lots of specialization emerging.
So, if we had to boil this all down, what's the main takeaway for you, the listener?
I think it's that the global startup world is incredibly dynamic right now. You see very different growth speeds, different regions focusing on different things, and those two big forces we mentioned at the start.
AI and geopolitics.
Exactly. They're undeniably shaping where innovation is happening and how founders really need to think strategically about location and industry.
And reports like this one from Startup Link are trying to provide that map, that visibility into these complex shifts.
Yeah, their data gives valuable insights, whether you're a founder yourself, an investor, or someone involved in policy trying to foster growth.
So, thinking about everything we've just covered, what stands out to you? Did anything surprise you about these global shifts? Maybe a region or a trend you want to look into more?
And maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Considering how fast everything is changing, how can anyone, whether you're an individual or part of a larger organization, best adapt? How do you not just react, but actually capitalize on these evolving global innovation landscapes?
Definitely something to chew on. A lot happening out there.